Is urban renewal a synonym for urban removal, and is it forcing the black residents away from Washington, D.C.? I submit to you that it is urban removal. Yes, and it is a resounding yes. When you hear the term renewal, you think it should be an exciting time. Your area is going to be revitalized. You get new community centers, new stores, new theaters. But what happens when you can't afford those things? What happens when you have to move out of that area because you can no longer afford to live in that area? Renewal is the process where an urban neighbor is revitalized. So you may have dilapidated buildings and then they're revitalized to better buildings, which builds up the community. But then it causes gentrification. When you're priced out of that area, you can no longer afford the area. The cost of the items rise, taxes also rise, and you can't live there. Then it becomes known as gentrification. It's when wealthier residents move into an area that's populated with lower income residents, and that neighborhood begins to change. The demographics change, the education change, the racial makeup changes. The National Community Reinvestment Corporation did a study in 2019, and it looked at major cities across the country where urban renewal or gentrification has taken place. Washington, D.C. has the most gentrified neighborhoods from 2000 to 2013. It has resulted in more than 20,000 people being displaced from Washington, D.C., and most of them have been low-income Black Americans. Washington, D.C. is not new to urban renewal or urban removal as coined by author and activist James Baldwin. In 1940s and 1950s, Southwest Washington, D.C. experienced urban removal. So Southwest Washington, it was a bustling area for the African Americans. They owned businesses, they owned department stores, barber shops, candy stores, but they were located in a place that was near the seat of government, which is the National Mall. So the politicians at that time, they wanted a slum clearance of Southwest. So they began to order all the businesses and everything to shut down and move. The residents fought back. As a matter of fact, there's a Supreme Court case called Berman versus Parker where they fought back to stay where they were. But the government used its eminent domain, Fifth Amendment, to force them out with just compensation. This is a picture of Southwest in 1959 when they had demolished a section to get ready for urban renewal. This was 11th and Virginia Avenue after the demolition, and we see the Washington Monument in the background. So the Shaw neighborhood, led by Reverend Walter Fauntroy, they got ahead of the game. They saw what had happened in Southwest, and they said, we are going to initiate our own urban renewal. So what they did, what Walter Fauntroy did, along with the Model Inner City Community Organization, they hired Black architects and engineers to develop their own plan. See, Shaw was an affluent neighborhood, bordered by U Street at the top, which it was known as like the Black Broadway. Along 7th and T, you had theaters, you had the Howard Theater, you had the Howard Theater, the Booker T. Washington Theater, and also the Dunbar Theater. So churches were also a big part of this revitalization in the Shaw neighborhood. You had the House of Prayer, which many people are familiar with, the Catholic Church, Reverend Fauntroy's own New Bethel Church, and a white church in Bethesda called Westmoreland Congregational Church. They came together to lead these efforts. And it worked well for decades. For decades. As a matter of fact, in 1980, Shaw had a 78% Black community. But that has changed over the years. In 2010, it decreased down to 44%. The median home prices went up in 1995 from 145,000 to a whopping 781,000 in 2017, making it difficult for African Americans to be able to afford housing in that area. So what does it do to the psyche of the Black community? How does it affect the mind and the spirit of those who have experienced urban removal or urban renewal, as they like to call it? When costs increase, rent increase. So one of two things have to happen: eviction or displacement. If you're moved away, that means you moved away from the things that are familiar to you. And it can cause depression. And it feels like segregation to a people who have fought for so long for change. So, should communities be revitalized? Absolutely. Do people want better in their neighborhoods? Absolutely. Do they want it at fear of displacement? No. The word removal means to move away things that you don't want. That's what's happening in Washington, D.C. It's been happening for a while, and it has continued to happen. So I submit to you today, again, that it is urban removal and not urban renewal for Washington, D.C. Thank you.